Good morning. Great to see you again. So, welcome to another episode of Sales and Marketing Fry Talks. As usually, every second Friday, we share insights, best practices, and anecdotes from B2B companies. Entering any new market requires well-planned and consistently executed go-to-market plan. We know it well. We discussed it several times already in previous episodes, and feel free to check out our previous discussions on this topic. However, today we are going to discuss one very special market, and this is about the Norwegian market. And why it is so special? Because in many cases, it is considered as one of the most desired by many companies, especially in the IT industry. There are a lot of good customers who are willing to pay for the great IT solutions, and that is why it is so attractive. But is it worth it? And what it actually takes to become a successful in the Norwegian market? For that, we have invited Anneli Andersen, the owner of Export to Norway, who is helping companies enter Norwegian market. So welcome, Anneli.
Welcome. Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you, Andres, for this introduction. I'm very happy to be here and hope to open up today the Norwegian market a bit better, especially with a focus on tech and potentially also IT companies.
Yeah, excellent. So please, Anneli, help us understand, can the Norwegian market actually give what many companies are hoping for? How hard is the nut?
Yeah, where I would start from, I would give a quick introduction to why Norwegian market is so attractive and why there are where do we see the potential there.
Yes.
And the first thing maybe to mention is that Norwegian ICT imports already a couple of years ago was more than 3 billion euros. And it doubled from 2015 to 2019. And the same trend is expected to continue. The other thing I would mention that there is a big shortage of IT people already now. Half of the companies in Norway are saying they are lacking IT people.
Oh.
And by 2030, it's expected that the shortage of IT people is expected to increase to 40,000 employees, 40,000 IT people. And
impressive.
two more things. Norway, as you mentioned, being highly digitalized society. And living here myself, the Norwegian life, using services both personally as well as for my business, I see how easy it is to do things online. And of course, the background here is that the working hour, any working hour costs so much that if Norway does not go the way of digitalization and automation, it would be very difficult for Norwegians, both in terms of state budget as well as to be competitive on the world markets. But last but not least, because I'm sure there might be some companies listening here who are targeting consumers. And as in any society, we have early adopters. And as I would say, or I hope you agree with me, the share of early adopters, more or less wherever you are globally in terms of mindset, is probably the same. But what is maybe different in Norway, those early adopters also have the money to test those new products and services and a little bit play around and see what works for them. So in that sense, Norway could be a very interesting test bed to come with your app or subscription type of service and start testing the market and see how it works.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks
actually. Actually, I think this Anneli, what you mentioned, the difference in terms of labor cost, that's a big factor. I just pulled up the numbers and I tried to see what exactly we are talking about. And you see, it turns out that in Norway, 1 hour of labor on average costs 51 euro. 51 euro, right? And just for the sake of comparison, the same 1 hour of labor in Latvia costs 11 euros. In Estonia, it costs, give me a moment, 14.5 euros. In Lithuania, again 11. In where else should we look? Let's look at Germany. In Germany, 37. So even in comparison to Germany, Norway is very expensive, and I would imagine that it has impact on everything. These people should really pay attention to value and should be looking at automating everything that's possible, because otherwise it's just so costly.
Yeah, fully agree with you, and that's what we see here, especially that any services are especially expensive compared to any Eastern European market, or also compared to Finland or Germany. And what is maybe interesting also to mention, I listened a couple of months ago how Finnish Export Development Agency was talking to Finnish companies about Norwegian market in Finnish language. I understand Finnish as well. And what was really cool, how they were talking about this market as unlimited opportunities. But we often from the Baltics we are a little bit afraid of the first barrier to come over and get behind the table with Norwegian decision makers. And my advice here is to really think through whom you are targeting in Norway. Have your sales story in place. And of course, based on where are your strengths, this specialization thing. Because if you come in as a general IT company, I am ready to help you here or there without defining where is your core competence, you can very quickly end up in this price discussions. And here in the Baltics, we are not the cheapest anymore to go into that discussion. So, but of course, when Norwegians are buying across borders, they are buying two things. One is innovation, and the other is value. And the value can also be translated to somewhat cheaper price. Is it 15 or 30%? That might be dependent on what kind of innovation and core competence you are bringing in. But yeah, in terms of Norwegian value, what they are looking for is somewhat to see a win there. But what is working, what is kind of a little bit can be seen as an advantage for foreign companies entering the Norwegian market in this IT sector, the capacity, the shortage of people in IT sector. So when half of the companies are saying they are lacking people, then that's a clear indication that they need to buy some part of the services or the solutions in across borders.
Yeah. But it seems also that, as you mentioned, there are two things, basically the innovation, what Norwegian companies are looking for, because they have to be innovative themselves in order to compete on the global market, right? Due to the high cost. And secondly, what they are looking for is somehow like this capacity and specialization, right? So how companies can prepare for that before they entering the market? What would be the step for doing this?
Yeah, one thing I see more or less on weekly basis where companies could do a better job entering any export market is get their sales story right. Because first of all, in any market, you need to get behind the table. And my recommendation here is kind of to think through who's your ideal customer in Norwegian market. Yes. Are you going business to consumer or business to business? Does it make sense for you to use a local partner here in Norway? How do you build it up? And then based on that, we put in place, I call it so-called profile of a potential partner, profile of your ideal customer partner here in Norway. And then it's a little bit dependent how well you know your market. If you have good market research from other markets, know your competitors, know their price level, we can more or less expect it to be the same here. But if you don't have that, or if you don't know Norwegian market enough, then it makes sense maybe to do also a light version of competitor analysis. Yes. And then, of course, map out those potential partners and start talking with them, because this is where we will hear where are opportunities for your kind of service or solution. And thereby, very important is to get your sales story right, because if, you know, the first contact normally, of course, living here in Norway, I have my own network here. And to some companies, I have access through my own network. But then, as in any sales, you always have also those companies you don't have back door open to, where you call and start the discussion, and where we end up very quickly in those discussions, send something. And then it's important, what do we send to them? And this should be a light story with not too many words, why it is you they should sit down with. And what is especially important in Norway, because you need to build that trust, that you show the history, you show your competence, you show your references, and kind of any other, the size of your team, the size of the projects you have done, to show that so that this Norwegian partner, after looking at your light sales story, would think, oh yeah, these guys know what they are doing. It's worth to sit down with them. It's worth to sit down with them. It doesn't mean that we will immediately see business behind it, but we get behind the table. And that's the most important thing early on for any company entering any export market, I would say.
So
Yes, I
breaking
totally
in
agree.
with the, into the market with just a cheap price is not something what you then see working well, right?
As I mentioned earlier on, there are two things Norwegians are buying across borders. It's innovation and it's value. And maybe this value is politically correct way often saying a little bit cheaper price. But then it depends how well you position yourself and with whom you are competing. Because one thing maybe also to mention with Norwegian market, there are lots of foreign employees here, kind of foreign workers, especially from Lithuania and Poland, 250,000 before COVID. So the number might a little bit have changed throughout this COVID period. But what those Lithuanian and Polish workers have also done, they have brought with them Lithuanian and Polish businesses. So people who started early on, let's say, working in Norwegian IT companies today might have their own IT company, which is kind of with a front face here in Norway, but a lot of the services are done, let's say, back in Poland for a cheaper price. And here, so this, you definitely need to think about the price points as well, because often, especially if you don't have cutting edge innovation or stuff, you start hearing those price points early on, and then it makes sense that to know why you are either a little bit more expensive or with whom you are competing here.
All right. I think this what you mentioned about building trust, that is incredibly important, and I would say not only in Norway market, but I think what makes Norway market especially sensitive to these things is because, if they run into any trouble, fixing the problems may be very, very costly. So I would imagine that this would be one reason why these people would really look for a trust and being able to trust. But look, I wanted to ask another question. I totally agree that it's very important to get at the table for the first conversation, but what's your impression? Are Norwegians open to work with companies in English language and communicate in English language, or still would they prefer having conversation in Norwegian, perhaps with local representative?
This is a little bit changing because before COVID times, I heard often that there's a big shortage of IT people, but nevertheless, those Norwegian companies would like to have IT people in speaking Norwegian, and that is a little bit the same on the services side, especially those front-facing figures, kind of. So what several companies do, I know also some Estonian companies who have both up a Norwegian IT company, maybe a smaller IT company. So they have the front-facing employees doing their project managers, doing their work in Norwegian, but then a lot of the actual programming or whatever is needed, that is done in cheaper countries. So that's maybe one part of it. Remind me your question. There was the other side to it.
So the question generally was about the language. Can a company without local office, without full localization, without Norwegian-speaking sales representative, have realistic chance to sell, let's say, their innovative product?
Yeah. So we come kind of more to tech companies with, let's say, SaaS products here and kind of targeting Norwegian businesses directly. The honest truth is, as also to get behind the table with the Norwegian companies, when you have borders to put your sales material or a little bit of marketing into Norwegian language, it immediately helps because you simply look more local, and what you are signaling to your potential partner, ideal customer in Norway, you are taking Norwegian market seriously enough to have done this investment, put it into Norwegian language. And so me living in Norway, I of course work in Norwegian language. I contact them in Norwegian language. I send them the first light version of the company's sales story, also in Norwegian, to get behind the table. And then when we already get behind the table, then I bring the company there with me, and then we switch to English. But as in any business, IT here being more, I hope in general, I can say that in IT business, you should be able to take those business discussions when they are already interested in English. So, but yeah, depending on if it's products, then product, especially targeting, let's say, the consumer side of the business, it needs to be in Norwegian. So and then if it's a business customer on the other end, we're also, depending on what level people are using this app or service, dependent on that, we can discuss. And it a little bit depends also on competition, because if you have a competitor in Norwegian market whose product is available in Norwegian language, then of course it would be very difficult to come in based on English language.
Yeah. Absolutely true, and it only confirms that this go-to-market planning or proper go-to-market planning is still necessary, and it's even more important for entering markets like Norway, right? So understanding your customers first, then understanding your competitors, creating your unique value proposition, and basically how do you bring it to your potential customers, which language, which channels, and things like that. But again, this is something we discussed many times before. Feel free to check it in our previous episodes. But what I would like to ask here, Anneli, so like what are these practical first steps to enter? Like practically, what channels is better to use to introduce yourself? I assume that Norwegian market is pretty digitally savvy, so they probably leverage a lot of digital channels. Is it the right assumption, or they still prefer this old-fashioned, maybe face-to-face communication instead?
Yeah. So the first step for any exporter is kind of to know which market to target. Yes. So I make the assumption that they have done their homework in terms of mapping out Norway as an ideal market for them to take further. And then, as I mentioned, the absolute first step is that you put in place this profile of your ideal customer, potential partner, the strategy part. And then to get behind the table with these people, you need to look how you look to them today already in different channels, because what any company, any buyer or decision maker in any company will do, in addition to looking at your own sales story, they will put your name into Google and kind of see what comes out from there. And then it's also a question how visible and with what are you also in LinkedIn. So all this, the whole sales story. And my recommendation really for the beginning is to think through also, in addition to this, who is your ideal partner? What do you want to sell to them? Because I have often IT companies contacting me in the beginning with rather general interest towards Norwegian market. And then when we start a little bit digging into their competencies or their experience or references, then it might come out that maybe they are especially strong in banking field, helping there something with back office banking thing. Then of course we should be targeting that type of customers with that type of message. And then what I also recommend to think about, bringing this banking example, if your reference is, let's say, back office of a Nordic bank for whom you are working in Lithuania, try to sell it more as this you are working for this Nordic bank rather than have a Lithuanian company name there. So all this, how to package your story and get behind the table, and that is a little bit related also to the same high hourly cost, because Norwegians are very selective with whom they take those meetings, where to use their time. This 50, what was it, 51 to 3 euros per hour, kind of on average, where do they put this time? Because in the end of the day, no one will give their extra people to their team to meet lots of potential partners, but you need to get through this first kind of screening to get even behind the table and then take it further from there.
Yeah, it's only confirms that your basically value proposition is super critical in order to open the door for your business, right? And to have at least initial conversation.
And at the same, it's quite challenging for IT companies, because very often they very proudly announce that we can do everything. And everything doesn't sell, right? You need to narrow down on specific industry where you have, let's say, customer evidence, where you have case studies, and then you can go to the same industry in other countries. But you cannot go with the message we can do everything. That's very difficult to believe, and even more difficult to buy.
And maybe to keep in mind also how highly digitalized the Norwegian society is, especially Estonian companies with this strong marketing of Estonia being the e-country of the world in a way. And then approaching the Norwegian market, hoping people would look up to them. But Norway being so highly digitalized, also how automated Norwegian industry is. So kind of try to think through beforehand where is it you can add value in this highly digitalized society, rather than saying I can do anything.
Yeah, as you said, like highly critically look at your portfolio and services and see whether you can really bring an innovation what Norwegian businesses are looking after, right? True innovation, not just maybe it's a good solution for your local market or less developed, but Norwegian market is on the most developed markets, right? And yeah, that's a very good insight you're sharing, Anneli, with us. But like coming back to this, the culture and the way how do you introduce yourself. Shell company like do maybe also the digital activities beforehand before entering the market? So like, let's say running maybe some awareness campaign on LinkedIn, would it help in general, or you see from your practice it's much better to get into direct conversation and presenting you maybe on some industry events or maybe some association events or something like that?
Yeah, it depends very much on what you are selling and to whom you are selling.
Of course.
So
yes.
the more business to business you go, the less important this how to say this direct marketing towards Norwegian market kind of becomes that you can run on your let's call it global marketing or European marketing in English language, because you are in the business to business field and maybe you are targeting like 5 to 10 companies here in Norway. But nevertheless, it's important what those companies, how do they see you online? And if you have been able already to create some image for yourself, or when I put your name into the Google, immediately some, very straightforward website, some case studies, something
blogs,
comes up immediately. That increases, our chances to get behind the table without a doubt, because that is the first screening which we need to come through. And here we need to be, how to say, creative and think what makes sense for us to do to get this trust thing as high as possible.
Yeah, but is it still possible, like for outside company to get into the conversation directly, or you need somebody locally who can like open the door for you?
That much I can say based on also my own experience, because I have been working with Norwegian market since 2007. And first in English language, today in Norwegian language. And of course, it's easier to get behind the table when you work in Norwegian. So people are more open. I would even say a little bit more friendly. You kind of more helpful. They see that you are... Again, they see it as an investment you have done to the market, that you are serious about Norwegian market, that you are not just trying as one of the many companies. So think how you can kind of see more local, but at the same time, Norwegians speak very good English. So as I said before, when they are already interested to work with you, then I'd like to hope that in IT sector, projects will not fall behind Norwegians not speaking English. The other way around, what I have seen happening, that maybe on the Baltic side or in those Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian, Polish companies, sometimes people, the front-facing people, project managers, could have a little bit better English knowledge to be on the same level with Norwegians, so that you wouldn't have any communication going lost there.
All right, good. And Anneli, as we are running out of time, I wanted to ask, if somebody feels like entering Norway market and if they could use, let's say, your advice, what's the best way to contact you?
Oh yeah, the best way to contact me is through LinkedIn. Put in Anneli Andersen, experts in Norway. Hopefully you will very easily come across my profile and write me, and we'll take further from there. In addition, what I would say, I try to write on weekly basis in LinkedIn a little bit about the Norwegian market on a more general term. Sometimes IT topics come up, sometimes it's furniture or some other businesses. So if you follow also that, hopefully it will kind of help you in your work approaching the Norwegian market.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you very much, Anneli, for being with us today and sharing all your insights and practical tips and tricks. For me, it was really insightful and useful. I hope for our listeners and people who were watching us today also was interesting. I just wanted to remind you, dear listeners and dear participants of today's live show, that all of our previous episodes are available on our podcast. Whatever platform you prefer, you can go and search for Sales and Marketing Fry Talks. You definitely will find it there. Please subscribe and give us a feedback. What do you think about this? We also have put all the collection of our recordings on YouTube channel, and you can find the link now on the chat window. And all previous episodes are available also on our YouTube channel. And please, we are looking for your comments and feedback on topics what we already have covered, and on topics what you still expect us to cover, what type of experts you would like us to introduce, and so on. So maybe yourself, you would like to come and share your experience of running sales and marketing in B2B. Please reach out to us, and we will be happy to introduce you to our audience. So I wish you all great rest of the Friday and wonderful weekend. And stay tuned. We will be shortly announcing our next topic, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.